Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and since it seems like Harvey Beaks is about to be faded into obscurity, I figure it's finally about time that I give it a review. Harvey Beaks is a cartoon about a rule-following 9-year-old anthropomorphic bird named Harvey and his best friends, two crude siblings named Fee and Foo. The trio go on various adventures, both high fantasy as well as mundane ones, such as meeting a living finger statue or just dancing at a nightclub. From the first episode, Pachoo, I got the impression that this was yet another lame Nickelodeon gross-out show. But after watching a few more episodes, the show really grew on me. Between the beautiful art, engaging world, quirky stories, occasionally very funny moment, and most importantly, its big heart, there is a lot to like here. In terms of tone and style, the show is actually Studio Ghibli-like in more than a few ways, with its beautiful painted backgrounds and characters that include mushroom people and forest spirits. There's also this really whimsical, playful nature to the show that Ghibli always captures so well. It's a very upbeat, optimistic, and happy show all around. One of the cool stylistic choices is that there is a part of the show that airs before the title card is shown, which is something I've never really seen in a cartoon, and it's occasionally the punchline to a joke, like in Always Sunny. It's nothing crazy, but it's a cool little stylistic touch that gives the show its own unique feel to how it begins each episode. In terms of the story, much of the conflict, especially in earlier episodes, comes from the contrast of Harvey being so sweet, pure, and timid compared to Fee and Foo, who are loud, crude, rude, and weird. It's not super obvious at first that this is the show's formula, but if you pay attention, you'll notice that it's certainly a recurring thing that happens in a lot of episodes, just in a more subtle way than you'd expect. Especially because they're not trying to influence him to be bad so much as just a little bit more like them. As the show goes on, though, this happens a bit less, and more focus is placed on giving a spotlight to the very colorful secondary characters that this show has, with Harvey along for the ride. And speaking of characters, let's talk about them. Harvey, as previously stated, is a kind-hearted softie. He is as cute as he is genuine. What keeps him from being generic is just how likable he is and how far he goes to be a good kid. Though his default nature is pure, when he gets ideas from Fee, Foo, or other places, it can lead him down a dark path in the most adorable way possible. Then there's Fee and Foo, two rambunctious siblings of indeterminate species. Though they can be rude and loud, they genuinely do mean well. They certainly aren't bad or unlikable, just a bit unruly, and it's softened a bit by the fact that they're orphans and clearly don't have a firm grasp on society or politeness, and many of the things they do are just well-intentioned pranks or them just being themselves in their own weird way. And like I said, much of the show is hinged upon Harvey and Fee and Foo balancing each other out. They toughen Harvey up and serve to give the show a little bit of an edge, but Harvey keeps them in check and serves as a bit of a conscience for them whenever they do something a little bit dubious. There's also Harvey's parents, who are refreshing in that they're actually pretty helpful and surprisingly don't hate Fee and Foo like you'd expect, despite them being a bit of a bad influence on Harvey. Yeah, the dad has shades of dorkiness, but it's not bad or exaggerated too much, in most episodes anyway. And it is so refreshing to see parents who do take an active part in the story without usually being the conflict of it. And when they are, it's more of how Harvey wants to try really hard to impress them or make them happy, and not because they're bad parents that are strict or tough or absent or whatever. The cast is rounded out by a group of interesting kids that occasionally hang out with Harvey. Dade, a straight-laced bunny who has an unhealthy obsession with Harvey. Princess, a deep-voiced owl with a Valley Girl accent. Yeah, she's basically Lumpy Space Princess. Techno Bear, a guy who carries around a boombox and thinks he's a ladies' man. Claire, a fox overshadowed by her sister. Kratz, a cowardly skunk. Rooter, a survivalist warthog. Piri Piri, an optimistic bird. And there's also a few adult characters that finish off the cast, such as Jeremy, the soft-spoken mushroom man. Randall, a raccoon who owns a sort of pawn shop type place, who could never catch a break from his elderly doting mother. And Moth, a character who is oddly into steampunk. And honestly, this character feels a bit out of place. His obsession with steampunk is interesting, but doesn't really gel with the rest of the show. And it's especially weird because there's a whole hour-long episode dedicated to it. Anyway, let's talk about the humor. This show is what I would call a charming comedy, in that it's not trying to be super funny or even to tell these really interesting stories, but instead focus is placed on enjoying watching the characters just being themselves and marveling at the beauty of the setting. Another show I would put in this category is We Bare Bears. If you're still not sure exactly what I mean, I'll give a comparison here. You know how many SpongeBob episodes will ruin a sweet ending with one last gag that's a bit harsh or undoes a lot of the episode or whatever? Well, Harvey Beaks, as well as We Bare Bears, for the most part, it, won't do that. They prefer to leave endings happy and sweet. Harvey Beaks can certainly have an edge to it every so often, but in general, it is more sweet than anything else. Just listen to Harvey's voice and you'll see what I'm getting at. And in general, this is not a bad thing. Do not make the mistake in thinking that I'm knocking the show for not being super funny or not having super dramatic moments or whatever. The show does what it does well, and I think there is certainly a place for charming comedies. However, some episodes can be kind of dull. Usually the show's charm is able to make up for how light the story or comedy can be, but there's a point at which the story is too boring and the comedy is too light that not even the charm can make up for it. It only happens once in a while, so it's not a huge problem, but that is the downside to charming comedies that have a lot more heart than they do laughs or drama. And in fact, weirdly enough, I would say that this is a rare show that is actually better not to marathon or binge watch. I think it works best to only watch a few episodes at a time, to get a glimpse into Harvey's world and come back to reality, as the charm does wear down if you view too much of it at a time. And since it is ultimately going to be a very short show, you are better off, in my opinion, not just burning through all of it at once. My favorite episode of the show is Bark Cart for its action and silly Mario Kart references, and I also highly recommend watching until at least The Finger, which is the 3rd episode, as it's another great one, and the first 2 are a little rough around the edges. So if you like We Bare Bears or Studio Ghibli-esque work, I definitely recommend Harvey Beaks. That said, I don't highly recommend it, as though it is certainly good and special in its own way, I wouldn't call it brilliant or groundbreaking or anything even close to that. It's a cute little show that does its thing. It was never meant to be a huge hit, and so of course Nickelodeon wasn't going to keep it around for long. I hope you enjoyed this review, and if you'd like to see my reviews of other shows like Rick and Morty, Steven Universe, or Gravity Falls, please check out the links on the screen right now. And with that, bye guy rules,